Hello, everyone. Today our lecture is on writing the introduction, conclusion, and abstract. This is just a very easiest and less time-taking part of the whole of the paper. So, let's start from the introduction. Introduction and background is actually what is already known about the topic. It should have these points: what is already known, what is the background and existing knowledge, common terminologies that is in your research question. For example, if it is on acute MI, then you have to define what is MI and uh, what is acute MI and how it happens, what are the standard treatment or interventions that are being used. And then you would discuss about what is not known about your topic and what are the knowledge gaps and mm, if standard treatments are not much effective and you think your treatment options are needed, then you have to discuss what new treatment options are available. And if you are studying a specific drug, then you have to define it and talk about it. And then you have to write your research goal. What are you planning to do? What is your research question? These three are mandatory things. And you can add a quote, a story, a statistical fact. For example, uh, like this percentage of people are suffering from migraine, or this percentage is the mortality rate from MI or something like that. So you can add that in the introduction at the start, but that is not mandatory. This is just an advanced level, but these three things are mandatory. So let's look at the introduction. For example, this is the paper, and let's see the at the introduction section. So this is about the efficacy and safety of Inoumab for migraine prevention. So what would you do in introduction and background is you would define what is migraine. So this is a debilitating neurological condition or whatever it is, you would define what disease you are studying. And in the migraine, if you are studying specific type, for example, episodic migraine, then you would define what is it and how it presents. So it presents with 15 headaches per month or something like that. And then treatment options. So whatever the disease you are studying in the first paragraph, you have to write about what is the disease that you are studying, how it presents, and what are the signs and symptoms the patients have. And then medications, standard drugs that are available, how efficacious they are. And then, for example, CGRP antibody, what new treatment options are available and what drug you are studying, and how this drug acts, or what is the mechanism of action of this drug. Um, and then you can write about what is the efficacy or what are the adverse effects that are known about the specific drug that you are studying, and what are the doses that you give, and what are the main safety concerns about the drug. And then at the end, this is a bit short here, you can just um, write it in detail about your research questions. So this systematic review is conducted to investigate short and long-term efficacy of the specific drug in the specific disease. You can detail it a little bit about why you are studying this topic, and why you included certain studies, or um, what is your main goal, or what gaps you noticed and you are doing this. So this is the introduction section. So how to select papers from introduction? For introduction, like the final articles, 10 to 15 articles that you have chosen for your writing your review, you have to find studies other than that to write the introduction section. So we have more references and more studies in our review. So how you have to select those studies is, for example, these are the 10 to 15 studies that you have included in your review. You can go back. You can go back where you had all the studies according to your PICO criteria, but you didn't include them for some reasons. So you would open the papers one by one, and then you would decide what you want to take from that paper. For example, from one paper, you would take the definition of the drug. From another paper, you would take how it presents. In another paper, you would take the mechanism of action of the drug, or um, adverse effects of the drugs. So you would read those papers, the introduction of those papers one by one, and um, um, whatever papers you decide that I want to take the data from these papers, you would download them, and you would rephrase the points that we just did um, in the last lecture, like in writing the discussion section. So you would rephrase the points similarly, and then you would just give the reference, and you are done with your introduction. So you wrote about you explained your PICO criteria, like what is your patient population, how it presents, and then your intervention, what is the drug you are studying, and detail about it, how this drug works, and um, how much this drug has been studied already, and um, what is needed to be done further, and you would just explain everything that has been done, that needs to be done, and why you are doing this research. And this is your introduction and background section. So minimum can be 5 to 6 lines and maximum half a page. Mostly it has no figures and tables, but you can add it if you want to. I told you that you cannot take figures from the internet because it has plagiarism and you have to take permission from the author. But you can always make flow diagrams. Like if in the discussion section as well, you are describing a mechanism of action of certain drug, then you can make your own flow chart or flow diagram and you can add it there. An introduction section can have 8 to 15 references, and it may or may not have your finalized articles. Try to not add your finalized articles, and add articles other than them, so that you have more references. And then we have conclusion section. It is at the end of your paper after discussion section. You have to explain what you concluded from your review. It should have take-home message and suggestions for the future. So the three must points that you have to add in your conclusion is, first is your research question, and second is you would add important points from your paper. You can add 1 point from each subheading, and then future recommendations and suggestions related to the topic. So these three are important. And then you can add why your paper is important, though it is not mandatory, but um, you can add 1 to 2 lines on why your review was important. So, for example, let's take it from here. So this was the discussion section, and then limitations, um, and then conclusion. So I told you the 3 points. First is your research question and points from each subheading and future recommendations. So our study explored the efficacy and safety of adalimumab through real-world observational studies, assessing short-term and long-term outcomes. This was the research question that we just put it in different words. And then all reviewed studies report a significant reduction in MMDs or whatever. You have to add 1 point from your results and discussion section from each subheadings, or any point that you think is important, any adverse effects or anything that you think is important to discuss in the conclusion section, you have to add it there. And then after adding your results and discussion section, the important points from that, you have to add future suggestions. Future research should continue to build on these findings and further understand the long-term benefits and risks. So these 3 points are covered here that are important. And then you can add why your paper is important. The study is crucial as it evaluates real world effectiveness because only observational studies were added in this paper. If you have added clinical trials, you can add that this study is important as it evaluates the clinical trials that have most reliability. And so you can add why your paper is important by what you have done and why you did it and everything. You can write the importance of your study according to that. And this is just your conclusion section. You put your research question, what you studied in your review, what were the findings of your paper, and what you concluded from your paper, and what are the future recommendations and why your paper is important. Now, the last thing is abstract. We write abstract at the end of the paper because it is a summary of your research paper. It will cover all the sections, introduction and background, then methods, then results and discussion, and then conclusion. And anything mentioned in abstract should be written in your paper. So there are 3 types of abstract. One is structured abstract, in which you give the heading of your introduction and background, and then you write about it. Then you give the heading of method section, and you write about it. Then you give the heading of results and discussion section. And in unstructured abstract, they just one simple paragraph and there are no headings. And then there's semi-structured, in which there are headings, but they are not in different paragraphs, they are in the same paragraph. So let's see about the abstract. So this is the unstructured abstract in which migraine causes debilitating headaches, that is background. So I added a little bit of background up in here. Background and study objective. The study explores this. So background and then one line of your research goal and then your method section. PRISMA guidelines were used, these databases were used, and these studies were included, but quality assessment tool was included. And then um, conclusion, all studies demonstrated conclusion and results, significant reduction in this and this. So this is the conclusion. This is the unstructured abstract. This is the structured abstract. Introduction and background, you would write a little bit about that. You have to write everything that is in your paper. For example, when you are adding introduction and background, you have to write what you wrote in your introduction and background section, but you just have to change the wording a little bit here and there. And then the same method section, and then results section and conclusion. In the at the end of introduction section, you have to write the goal of your study. You can also add it separately, or you can just add a line at the end of your introduction and background section. So method section, results, and discussion section, conclusion. So you have to write everything that was included in your study, all the main headings, and then a little bit summary of that. And that is the abstract. So I want you that you all write structured abstract like that, because most of the papers require structured abstract. Um, and if the paper doesn't require structured abstract, then we can always, just remove the headings. But right now, I want from you to write like this in a structured format. So that was it. This is your paper that is completed. And so to summarize again, in the introduction section, you would define all the terminologies that were in your research question. You would define each and every word of your research question and what is already known about your topic, about your population, patients population, about your drugs, everything that is already known, everything that is the new researches and new treatments that are coming up, that are being studied, and your research goal. What are you studying and why you are doing that? That was the introduction. And in the conclusion, you would write the main points of your paper, what you concluded. If the drug was effective, the drug was not effective, or if you studied mechanism of action or pathophysiology like that, then you would add, the main mechanism of action and the main points from pathophysiology, just 22 points from each of your, the subheadings that you studied, and then feature recommendations. So this was your conclusion section, and then just abstract is very simple. You just have to write what you have already wrote in your paper, and you just have to write a summary of that, on one page. Mm, so right now, if you reached till there, then congratulations, because you are done uh with the draft, and now we can just improve the things here and there according to requirements of the journal. And if there is anything that needs to be done, then it won't take much time, because your rough draft and most time taking process has completed and you have done a wonderful job. Now, organization of the paper. First of all, abstract. Uh, Let me show you, and then we will see this. So your research question, you have to make it interesting, that I already told you. And you have to write your research question. Let's discuss it first. Titles and subheadings should be in title case. So you have to make your research question interesting. You can take ideas from ChatGPT or any AI tool to make your research question interesting. For example, if you are adding clinical trials or only observational, for example, in this article, only observational studies were included. For example, the studies that are conducted in, clinics, and the data is done after the drug has already been approved. So I added that in real world setting. So you can add what studies included or anything. And according to PRISMA guidelines, it is important that you add the word a systematic review at the end of your research question. To make your title interesting, write a systematic review at the end of your research question. And title case is to capitalize each alphabet of every word except the words that are of three alphabets or less. So except and, for, in, of, all, each word would have the first letter capitalized. For example, E is capitalized for exploring, E is capitalized for animal, E is capitalized for efficacy, and same like that, except these small words that are made up of three or less than three alphabets. So every first word would be capitalized. And then we were talking about organization. So first is abstract, that I told you that you would write structured abstract like this. And then keywords, and then introduction and background. Then method section, your eligibility criteria, your literature search strategy, study selection, risk of bias in individual studies. This is all the method section. And then result section, in which you would have your Prisma flow diagram, your study characteristics, and a study outcome. And this is your result section. And everything that you have, the tables and the things that you have summarized in your research section, you will discuss it in the discussion section. So after the introductory paragraph, you would have your subheadings, and this is the discussion section. At the end of discussion, you would have limitations. What limitations your study had. For example, you only included English language articles, you only included free accessible papers, and um, you only included RCTs. Whatever you included and whatever you excluded would be your limitation. And if the study included only have short-term side effects and more studies needed to be done to have long-term efficacy and safety of the drug. So a limitation section and then conclusion that we just studied, and then um, disclosures that there's no funding received, there's no conflict of interest among the authors, and there are no patients involved, and no ethical approval was needed. And then author contributions, that concept and design would be the main first author, and then everyone would be included in the other sections. So the person who is writing the paper would be the first author. The person who is mentoring you would be the last author, and everyone would be included in the middle, second, third, and fourth author. And once you are all done with your papers, I will tell you the authorship of each one of you. Mm. And the references. So this was the organization of the paper. Abstract, introduction, and background, then methods, then results, discussion, conclusion, and references. And so now when you are done with your paper, you have to check the grammar and plagiarism. So what is plagiarism? Plagiarism is similarity of what you wrote in your paper with some already published data. So it is considered a theft, that you have um, taken something from other people and you are identifying it as your own, and it is considered a very big crime, and you can be blocked from some journal for all your life if there's a lot of plagiarism in your paper. And so there are some websites and mm, some apps that let you to check the grammar and plagiarism. Like they have bought the function, so you can check the grammar and plagiarism of all of your papers. These are the paid resources: Grammarly.com, Turnitin, Authenticate, FactCheck, Paper Subscriber. And these are the mostly paid ones. This Authenticate is used by most journals, but we mostly don't have paid ones, so we use the free resources. If you know anyone who has any paid plagiarism checker, then you can ask your friend or someone who has this to let you check for your paper. If you don't, then we have these free resources, but when you are using the free resources, you have to check the plagiarism in more than one website. For example, if you're using the first one, and after doing that, you have to do from the second one as well. If you do from more than one, like two or three, then you would be more lost that you don't have any plagiarism. For example, if there is any, one website doesn't do it perfectly because it's a paid free resources and they are not as reliable as paid ones. So to have most reliability, we use more than one. So you have to check the grammar and plagiarism, and if there is any plagiarism in any line, they tell you that there's plagiarism there. You have to rephrase it and check it again. And once you check the grammar and plagiarism and correct it all, you have to tell me how much percentage of plagiarism did you have in your paper. So this is what I already told you. Titles and subheadings should be in title case. That is, each word would be capitalized like this, each alphabet. Make your title interesting and use only standard abbreviations, the abbreviations that are already standardized and in use. You cannot make abbreviations by yourself if they don't already exist. You just use the full form if there is no standardized abbreviation already. So use full form and then write the abbreviation in bracket. For example, you would write monoclonal antibody and you would write the abbreviation in brackets. And you would do it only when you are using this for the first time at the start of your paper. And in the rest of your paper, you would only use the abbreviation. Don't use etc. And numbers from 1 to 9 should be in spellings. For example, you would write NINE 9 and not 9. Except number of patients, percentages, drug dose, or statistics, numbers should be in spellings. And if any number 1 to 9 only. And if any sentence is starting from any number, then you would also have to write the spellings of that number. So that was all for today's lecture. Um, Introduction, what is already known about this topic, and you can take your introduction references from the articles that you have not included in your final search. And then download those articles and rephrase those lines and put the references to Mendeley, and you are done with your introduction section. And then conclusion is no references, just write the conclusion of your paper in your own words. And then abstract is also no references, just the summary of your paper, but you has already done. And what you wrote in your paper, you just have to summarize it um, at the start of your paper, so that everyone can know what is this paper about just from reading the abstract. And then you have to recheck the organization of your paper, and you have to do the grammar and plagiarism check. And that's it. This is your paper is done. And in the next lecture, we will discuss about how to find a research journal for publishing your research, and how to do the submission, and which journals to choose and which not to choose. So next lecture would be about the submission process, and your writing the paper is completed right now. So if you have any questions, just let me know, and all the best. Thank you.